All right, let's go. I am Saint Sir Coach, and today I have my cat with me. It's my cat. She's a domestic short hair gray cat, but because she's gray, people always think she's a Russian blue, although there are other kinds of gray cats out there. And either way, she's mixed. So who knows which kind of silver, gray, blue cat she's mixed with. Um, but depending on the light, I have seen different tones in her fur, like even brown tones. So just don't try to judge my cat. And there she goes. She doesn't want to be a part of this reading, which is fine. Um, she's like to be put on the spot, I guess. Um, but hi, my name is Saint Store Coach, and today I'm going to be doing something a little differently, where I'm going to be doing a reading for myself and kind of show, well, how would I do a reading for myself? So this is like more of a how-to video about how to read your own cards for your own life. If you like to bring specific things about lived experience into your reading, that's something I think is the greatest part about reading your own cards, right? The thing that's unfortunate about reading for an audience that isn't present, is you're just taking a guess and you're just spewing out a lot of generalized statements because you don't actually know what these people's circumstances are, how old they are, their education level, if they have formal educational studies in their background, what country they live in. Like, you don't know any of these things. It doesn't mean that the energy you're guessing or intuiting is off, but it could be, of course, skewed towards relevant to more people than others. And there's no way to really know for certain, right? Unless somebody comments on your content or shares with you in a personal reading. Oh, well, I don't know how that's relevant to me. And now when you're doing a personal reading for someone else, in the real time, in moment, or are able to gather information from them beforehand, whether it's a reading that's generalized or about specific subject matter, then you can kind of gauge and ask them more questions, clarifying questions, and say, how do how do you think this would be relevant for your circumstance? Or can you tell me a little bit more about this connection? Is it romantic? And then I can get more information. Now, when it's me, myself, or you yourself, right? When we're reading for ourselves, what's great is we already um, the things we're struggling with. Sometimes we know the things we're struggling with, but we can't name them. And sometimes we know the things that we're struggling with or that are bothering us, but we can't name them for whatever reason, or we struggle to admit what's going on. We especially if we find ourselves in a place we've been before. We find our place self in a place we've been before. I know, at least for me, then that makes me feel very stagnant, or like oh, I keep getting stuck. As opposed to life is about, rinsing and repeating. The cycles of the shampooing, just not everything is about the conditioner. You'll get to the conditioner. You'll get to moisturizing. And if you forget your moisturizer, the conditioner in the shower, you have your leave-in conditioner when you get out. Whatever metaphor you'd like to use, but this is something where even in spirituality and in spiritual and esoteric occultist spaces, we're still thinking with this patriarchal dominant mindset. And so this is where I'd like to challenge also myself. And like, am I stuck? Am I stagnant? Well, no, I'm not stuck or stagnant, and it definitely feels different previously than when before I had the knowledge I have now, before um I studied spirituality and different faiths and cards and practice energy readings and have channeled spirit and spirit guides and whatnot on my own. And so it's very different to have before not having those experiences and being like, yeah, I'm stuck, I'm stagnant, I keep getting stuck in the same place, as opposed to, no, I'm choosing, my soul is choosing to put like this song on repeat. And then I remember there's a lot of songs that I'll listen to on repeat for days, months at a time. Like I'll listen to a song so much, even in just the first month I've discovered it, so much so that it'll end up on my yearly like Spotify repeat list because I repeated it so much. Even if I think, oh, I'd only listened to that song like for a couple months, but I maybe played it like 10,000 times all the way through, right? And so there's something really beautiful I love about repeating the songs. Like, not that the song annoys me so much, I have to listen to it, but the song feels so good and is so complex and is hitting all of these satisfactory notes that I desire in music that I can't even or don't even feel like I need to put into words. I'm just gonna enjoy it on repeat over and over again. Um, and I love that experience with music. And thinking about music, right? Music is like the feminine to the masculine of math, right? If we're saying both math and music are the universal languages, and then we're going to be like, okay, well, which one? If we have to choose one being divine feminine, one being divine masculine, and then taking that into like, where do we see matriarchies, where do we see patriarchy? Like, we all know, like, the reason why a lot of people hate school is not just because it's a simulator within a simulation within a simulation within a simulation, but is that, we're more often being forced to learn things like math, and less often do we even get a chance to learn music in school settings. And in the US, at least in the United States, they cut funding for music. And that's not just as a club or as extracurriculars like symphony and orchestra and band extracurriculars, like after school, but during school. Like during school, I remember we used to at least have a xylophone, little bells and triangles in early primary school. Um, Right. So this is talking about prepubescent age, not even close to puberty, right? Just being like ding, ding, ding on these little bells and trying to learn about do, re, mi and scales and octaves and basically rudimentary music theory. Um, but it's wild to think that, if I didn't grow up already like in a musical household, there's a lot I wouldn't have been exposed to because my own education didn't have music. So I only think I had music in school in maybe one grade, like when I was 8 years old, maybe also when I was 9 or when I was 7 and 8. Um, or sometimes they would even be crossover into art class, and then actually be the visual art teacher that would have some of these instruments. And it's like, because they're not teaching music anymore because of budget cuts, they don't have music teachers. So then they're really making the art teacher be the teacher of all arts, which is very hard as someone who is taught, as someone who is a multidisciplinary artist. Like, I can't imagine like trying to also teach children like basic music now. I mean, I would do it like if that was the opportunity, like I was the only art. teacher hired and they didn't have any exposure to music. Music is so foundational to life and in many ways, which I won't go into, but I've been thinking a lot about how like this, yeah, just this, yeah, this, I love yin yang. Like I really do love, but you got to think about it as a whole. And you got to think about it as 64. Can't think about it as two. You can't think about it as binary. You can't think about it as yin versus yang. You can't, because as soon as you start to do that, you start to disconnect the whole body. It's like you might as well chop up your body in a bunch of parts while you're still alive. Um, and what was beautiful when I read recently on traditional Chinese medicine and what is called like blood deficiencies, blood disorders that are not the same that a Western diagnosis would give you. They're really thinking about blood is like holy elixir of life, and then chi is the energy force that helps that blood move, helps the blood do the things that blood does, helps oxygenate the blood, helps perform essential functions so that the blood can shine. But we all know like blood is it. Like vampires aren't coming for your chi. Vampires are not coming for your chi. They're coming for your blood. Wow, that is the funniest thing I've ever. Okay. Wow. That is wow. Something I've been saying recently is that humans are vampires without fangs. But it's interesting because I feel like vampires go after blood, but humans will go after your chi. Like capitalism will come after your chi. Like, yeah, you're like, I still got blood in me. I'm still human, but why do you feel so down? And it's like, man, I see blood pulsing through these veins, but is it pulsing? Is it pulsing or is it just there? And that's where we get, right? Like stagnant blood, stagnant chi, that, and then we get, right, the blood isn't flowing as much. And that's when we have like disconnect between the divine masculine, divine feminine. And sometimes we don't necessarily see that in our lives, like, oh, I need to embody masculine characteristics more. You have to remember that yin and yang are related to body organs like the heart, the lungs, the liver, the stomach, seasonal changes. So depending on how you're taking care of like your liver, your stomach, like, if you're, following Chinese medicine more closer to it, further away, depending on our body's individual needs, like I know my body prefers natural way of things with traditional Chinese medicine, and I have ancestral background in that. With this lifetime, this body sac is related to um Chinese ancestors and East Asian ancestors as well, and ancestors all over the globe. And then I have my own contemporary desires and yearnings and musings and ponderings. Um, so anyway, I went on a tangent there, but I was bringing that up because there's a lot I've been also learning about yin and yang and how, dang, there we go again, where the patriarchy, like, what if the world was actually majority matriarchy? Then it probably wouldn't ever become toxic. But if there was ever too much of like feminine energy, you don't even have to add a lot of masculine energy to be like, okay, now we've shaken it up, now we're balanced again. But something about patriarchy, because it comes with so much rigidity, because it comes with so much rules, because it comes with so much authoritative, authoritarian pressure, like it can skew towards like a psychological dictatorship, like a dictatorship of the mind through capitalism, through work-life balance, what that's supposed to be, quote unquote, and all of these aspects of our lives end up getting muddied and muddled in the mess, in the warfare of this. And of course, you also have I mean, the moment men were like, we are in charge and we're the patriarchy, like the moment the patriarchy was a thing, the moment, humanity kind of lost in the moment men start to have like more power in certain cultures and started to insinuate um that they were dominant, things got let out of control, to say the least. And so in I can't speak for every culture. I really am not a history buff, so I don't really know every culture. But anyway, I know this is affecting me in my life, and this is what I've been thinking about is masculine, feminine, like to clean, to not to clean, to beat myself up for not cleaning, or to clean what I can and then take a little rest. And then tomorrow is a new day. Or to, respect my body and my body's needs in the moment, and then to, you know, decide things another day. But, even thinking about the present moment and mindfulness, like what does that align with more? Well, that aligns more with yin, that aligns more with of course the balance of yin yang, of course, is thinking about the present. But in this day and age, if you were to, I don't even know if this is a word, but apply contemporary notions of gender studies, let's say, onto the present moment versus in the past, thinking about the past, we have PTSD. Thinking about the future, we have anxiety. But the present moment, that stillness, that quiet, is that pause against the rush, the going, the busy, 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 busy. And maybe this is where yin meets yang, because, but also I think because this culture that is very masculine, patriarchal, dominant, um, it's a lot of moving, 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 moving. And if you remember, chi is the mover, 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 mover. But things like meditation and even movement meditation, or whether you're still in meditation, the stillness of the mind, the stillness of, the heart, where then it's able to just put earthly things aside and breathe and be on its own. And there is this moment where the yin and yang can connect, can meet, right, because you have stillness, and then you have quiet, which is never really, unless you're in a soundproof room, self deprivation tank, it's not completely quiet. So there's still the sounds, the vibrations of the earth. There's still communication happening, even if, like, beyond your ears, beyond like even inner ear, beyond. And for folks who channel and do mediumship, everyone is different. But for me, like, there have been times where I'm like, it's so loud, like all these spirits yelling at me, and yet I don't hear anything. It's like I just know, I can just feel. And right, these are things that are like, oh, I'm describing it as one of the five senses, but this is beyond my five senses. And so for me, my clairaudience, sometimes it does require like silencing other things out in order to pick up on more minutia of sound. Um, So sometimes there's the sound that we find in the stillness, in the quiet. Um, and if we're thinking also about, well, the toxic patriarchy gave us binaries, then we're like, okay, so then meditation, stillness, quiet, if we are upholding matriarchal and divine femininity notions of sound and silence, then we're not getting 0% silence, 0% um sound. It's kind of like how you can think of every sound is a song. Everything you hear is music. Um, every vibration is a song, it's a sound. Every vibration is song. Every vibration, is spirit. Um, as is connected to life force energy, sound being connected to life force energy, sound being connected to blood, holy elixir of life. Um, and uh yeah, I gotta do a whole thing on like sound and like the rhythm of life, the rhythm of like the funk. Um, but maybe I'll do that another time, or on another platform. But I do wanted to get into, so this is what I've been thinking about. Obviously, spirit thought I needed to talk it out a little bit more too, which is why I ended up going on a tangent, really just to understand what my own thoughts were while I've been experiencing these different phenomenon. And again, I don't have all trigrams, 8 trigrams, like memorized with the yin yang. I don't specialize in traditional Chinese medicine. I just have seen practitioners and have studied a little bit of Baguzhang, which is connected to yin yang theory, and the 8 trigrams with the 64 measures, which can then, you can connect them to hermetics and things like the I Ching, um, and so on and so forth. But not here to talk about things I don't know. Today, there's things I'm learning. But there's things I would love to um go over for myself. So when I do my own readings, um, I tend to read um more generally. I know that in my heart, like I think I know what my issues are, and then like the ego just trips me up, and then I can't get to the bottom of my soul. So I try to count on my spirit guides, my angel team, my ancestors, everyone in the ethers and the spiritual realm to help a brother out. When it comes to like, okay, these are the things I verbally complain about. But what are things like deep in my soul that I'm like not even realizing is the core of that issue and why this issue is never resolved, or I keep, my focus is on the wrong things. And I say that not to be in a binary way, but to be like, oh, I have the solution. I have the tools, or like I didn't realize this was connected. Sometimes it's just a nudge, sometimes it's advice, sometimes it's brutal and it's tough love. Sometimes it's funny. So my guides and I, we talk in all kinds of, I mean, I personally code switch in all kinds of ways. I like things broken down to me straight, direct. I like things that are a little more difficult to understand. I like things that are funny. Um, yeah, all kinds of communication I appreciate. And so even though it's like, oh, these are only cards, quote unquote, um, I like to let me start shuffling. Now my thoughts are going. But anyway, I like to keep the doors open with what can be communicated. And then also I try not to second guess or doubt myself when it comes to how I'm about to interpret the cards or how I'm interpreting the cards. I like to, even if it's tarot, whether it's a more, I don't use traditional tarot decks. Although the ones I have, some of them do have traditional meanings, some of them in the guidebooks have all of the meanings. Um, including if there were to be reversals. Some of them don't necessarily encourage reversals. I also use oracle cards. Some oracle cards, have explicit directions. Some um will say, um, read this up to however you would. Um, yeah, a lot of cards are different. So what I try to do is when I'm getting a new deck, I try to wait if I can before messing with the deck, although I don't always do this. So if I can wait, I'll wait until I can read a little bit about it and see how the deck came about. There are some decks where the creator identifies as a medium, identifies as an oracle, says the deck was completely channeled. If a deck is channeled, I don't mess with that. If if a deck is channeled by a specific medium and it's a very specific, I can think of this. There's the metaphysical cannabis spirit, spirit deck, oracle guidebook and deck, oracle guidebook and deck, yes. And for that one, it was, I remember at first when I was using the deck, I didn't really get it. Not only did I have to read inside the deck, but I was feeling like the cards weren't syncing up to my energy. And then I went back and I read it, and it was like, oh, this is telling me to bless these cards, to do like a little tiny ritual to cleanse the space, cleanse the deck. And then as soon as I started doing that, it was like whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. I'm getting a lot of cards. Um, let's see this. Thank you. Okay. Any more from this deck? Um, so I like to work with what might not originally come to my mind. Um, but when I'm working with cards, I think it's important to recognize and appreciate where the oracle writer creator is coming from. And if they had plans for this deck or were like, I was channeling spirits, y'all better not mess this up, you know, um, I think there's already then like the cards are charged or they're like ready to be activated. But then if you're using the cards and they're not activated, then there's that can be an issue. And then there's times where you can kind of activate your decks all in a similar way, all in the same way, assuming that, every deck, the writer or creator was like, doing a huge um kind of almost a christening, a blessing, an activation onto the cards. Now, of course, in this day and age, when cards are being printed elsewhere and then they're being shipped to you. It really depends, right? Because sometimes like these energies can get lost or muddied or interfered with. I have plenty of decks where the writers don't call themselves oracles or they keep it really simple. and they say, do what you want with this deck. And so I think you definitely want to use your own judgment when it comes to like, oh, how do I set this deck off right? Um, the decks I'm using today are already quote unquote activated. And um, I think I did them all in a different way, but they're definitely not as much activation was like, I don't say required, but I kind of took ownership on how I was going to activate these cards and these decks. And so that's also a personal thing. I would say just if you are working with like a very specific Oracle deck where it's like super themed out, whether it's like angels, ancestors, spirit guides of other realms, especially other realms. I don't mess with that. Like, you know, if someone is genuinely channeling like other angels and other realms, like the frequencies of those. And now it also depends on what kind of practitioner you are. Um, I say the practitioner just loosely. It depends on like what kind of reader you are. Are you secular? Do you have a devout practice? Are you pious in any way? If you are, then that might be part of your practice is some kind of respect towards the cards, right? Is some kind of ritual towards the cards. There's also intentionality, which I think is really important. And that has to do that comes into play when you're reading the cards, when you're about to read the cards. It comes into play when whether you're reading them for yourself or for others. It comes to play when you're activating the cards, of course, as well. But intentionality, I think, is, of course, really important. It's kind of a lot of cards there for that deck. Let's see. I think I'll keep it at that. So I've pulled from 2 decks so far. I pulled from my music tarot deck, which because it's music, I try to interpret it also with my relationship with music. I'm definitely not going to let no Raider White traditionality, stand in my way. But there's a lot of tarot interpretations I don't have memorized. I've also experienced readers who are like, screw traditional tarot because sometimes the ways in which the oracle and the illustrator, whether they're separate people or the same person, work together to illustrate a non-Waite tarot deck where some of the symbology and the iconography looks quite different, um, then that is where I'm like, oh, then the traditional, like, or the go-to easier to say translations or iterations or interpretations aren't what's aligning here. What we want is something deeper. But of course, if you're mixing cards, I like to say, it's important to think about the expression of all the cards together and the interpretation of context. Like, okay, this normally means something challenging, but we're getting double negative. Let's say you get, double negative cards. Maybe you choose to interpret them as positive, because one was canceling the other out. Um, Maybe you do card readings where there are spreads, where depending on how the cards are laid out, whether it's tarot or oracle or a mix, there are little meanings there. Or maybe you ask a question at a time and there are things that come up for you. There are all kinds of ways to read cards. point being, there are all kinds of ways to read cards, but I want to read how I would read for myself. So this is not a collective reading. This is not a general reading. If you find something that resonates in here for you, take it. I mean, that's the deck, right? That's not me, that's the deck. And maybe you're just resonating with some things that I struggle with as well, which is why it's like coming up for you. Um, also resonating deeply, but this is an opportunity to see, okay, well, how would you read for yourself if you're teaching yourself cards, or if you think you don't know what you're doing, you're in that imposter syndrome, which I often find myself in, or even if gosh, what was I gonna say? Anyway, I would just want to dive into these, but what I want to say, and hopefully it'll come up. I was thinking of pulling one of those cards, but not sure. Okay, so I have this magical box of cards. These are cards from other decks that exist, and I've like either misplaced some cards, or I think I'm pretty sure I've misplaced cards from every single one of these decks. So they're slightly incomplete. Although I worked a lot with these decks, so I'm familiar with most of the cards. If not, I still have like the guidebooks. So this is like my mystery box. And so I will give it a good shake. And then I'm gonna pull, let's see, a few cards from here. Okay, two cat tarot cards. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, I was hoping to pull like a variety, but okay, here we go. Let's see, anything else? Okay, great. So cards that I got, cards that I got from my magical mystery box. I wanted to pull these just to gauge some energies, to get us started out. I pulled out most of the cards forward facing, front facing. So compared to the other tarot and oracle cards I pulled earlier, they're still facing top side down. So I'm not sure what they all are. But here we have two tarot cards and then two from the Starseed Oracle deck. From the Cat Tarot, I have Wheel of Fortune, um, which I love that it's this is funny now I'm looking at it. This is card 10. I also got 10 of Cups or like 10 of Bowls in like the Cat Tarot. Um, and it's funny because the Wheel of Fortune, we've got all like what's interesting in this depiction of Wheel of Fortune, we have an eagle with a red ribbon over the top. We have the cat almost like in an exercise wheel, which very rarely do I see cats in exercise wheels, but interesting that we have the cat here, almost like this cat is running this world. Okay. Which if we think about a cat being like instead of humankind, like the ruler of like divine femininity in fauna, in basically non-human animals. You see some beautiful connection there. And then we have two mice on either side of the cat down below, and then a bowl of water in between the two mice. Um, one mouse. It could be rats as well, but because it's cats, I'm assuming they're mice. One mouse has a ribbon, like the red ribbon the eagle is holding atop, um, around their eyes, right? The cat's eyes are free, and the second mouse's eyes are free. Um, so who knows? Did this this is almost giving me, and I got it in reverse, but this is almost giving me, like, cares if it was in reverse or not. It's giving me the sense of like the veil is being lifted, um, and kind of fated versus destined path. Like, what is fated, versus what is destiny? Like, your destiny is something you want, you plan, right? And so, it is destined. It is something that's fated, is like, no matter what you do, this will happen for sure. Very few things are like that. Um, and even then, that's like when I like to think, even Judgment Day, the day always kind of is swaying back and forth. It's never exactly going to be the same time, same day. Every single day we get closer, we also get farther from it. um, what's interesting about this Ten of Cups is when I think of Ten of Cups in regular tarot, I'm thinking these cups are full. These cups are full. And I'm thinking like, oh, I like, what's so interesting here is these cups are like all empty. It's like a stack of dishes. Now it's the color of the rainbow. Some of them are color of the rainbow, and then we have some more bowls on the other side. Um, and here was the Wheel of Fortune cards for sighted folks. So it's interesting to get 10, which is a major arcana card, 10 for the Wheel of Fortune. And then for her minor arcana card to get 10, 10 of bowls, 10 of cups again. So the Roman numeral of 10 denotes that for us. Um, but usually this card is hinting at or explicitly at, now it's not an ace of cups, but it is close. It's the next closest thing. So when I think 10 of cups, especially over 9 of cups, I'm thinking wish granted, wish fulfilled, emotionally fulfilled. This is giving me non-fulfilled. This is giving me like I have options, and yet like I have bowls, and yet all the bowls are empty. I have now there is like the waiting game, like, can this cat be patient? So now I'm getting a lesson of patience, and being like, okay, well, if I think about it like this, all the bowls are empty. Well, all the bowls are empty because any of these bowls can be filled at any moment. So there's this anticipatory um energy, this energy of not glass fully empty, but my kind of like when the knight or page of cups, they only got one cup, and they're coming to the teacher, they're coming to the master with one cup, coming to the king with one cup. It is an offering, an invitation. It is like, please, sir, I loved learning from you. Can you please refill my cup of learning? Now, cups don't have to usually do with learning, they have to do with emotionality. But here, I also, we also get dreams, wishes, and desires. And so I'm getting opportunity from here, especially with the empty versus full. And it's interesting that all of those bowls are empty. All of those bowls are empty. I've never seen a depiction of 10 of cups like that. Um, which is interesting. I'm literally more than positive. I just saw 10 of Cups the other day, and it was like a whole bunch of friends, like rainbows. And then the 10 of Cups, they were like goblets all across the rainbow. I'm more than positive that was an exact depiction I saw of 10 of Cups. And so it's wild that, but then again, this is cat tarot. So I was thinking about cats instead of humans. So there is like the fool's journey, in tarot, which is also the hero's journey. If you've ever heard of the archetype of the hero and the fool in tarot, they're the same person. And it's kind of, and what I love about that is, like that the hero is the fool, the one that people least expect, the one that's the most quote unquote ignorant, the one that is the most misunderstood, mistreated, will be the hero in the end. And this is not something that is normally spoken about in, outside of cards and outside of, um, certain cultures, especially in the West, like superhero movies. Like sometimes, yeah, they start out as a little guy, but once they become super, like that's it. Like they're just superhero forever. And then we kind of forget that they were human and that they were like underdogs in any way. Like I think Kick-Ass is one of the, and Deadpool, but mostly Kick-Ass. But even then, like these are white guys. It's like how much are they suffering? Like, you know, um, maybe like what's a newer, is it a limited, would it be called a limited series? Yeah, because it's got episodes, but they're really long episodes. Supercell, which is British. All the characters are descendants of parents with sickle cell or the sickle cell trait, which is known to be predominantly um experienced in the African diaspora. But it was cool because they were British. And so we didn't have any of this like American BS. Not that British doesn't have BS. Um, Not that the UK doesn't have BS, right? But um, I don't know, I've always related more closely to being a cat than a human. And like I always like, man, I just wish I could trade places with my cat. Like my cat got to reincarnate as a cat this lifetime. And like I'm looking at her and I'm like, I know you've been a human before. Don't come at me. And she usually doesn't. Like she doesn't complain too much unless it's like really affecting her world and her space. Like she will tell me when the litter box is dirty and I need to clean it. It's really funny. She'll also tell me when to it's time to feed her as well. Um, but there's something about like in this 10 of cups where I was like, it's empty. Now, the reason I'm thinking they're all empty, and I'm assuming they're empty, is because they're stacked, almost like, oh, the odds being stacked against someone, except here this cat is leaning over the kitchen counter, over the table. Like these bowls are recently washed. They know these are their bowls. There's also a fork there. Cat doesn't need a fork, but to help us know that this is the kitchen. There's a fork there, right? Like when my cat knows that I go into the kitchen, she knows that's the place where food comes out. That's where I'm nourishing myself and possibly nourishing her or getting her things ready. Um, but there's something about like not necessarily not taking for granted, kind of. It's I say this in a positive way, but it's like, hey, it may feel like odds are stacked against you, like you have nothing to work with. Um, but these are just empty vessels. These vessels, you know how to work with a vessel. I know how to work with a vessel, right? My body is a vessel. As an artist, I predominantly started out as a performance artist, as a performing artist, as a dancer. So like all I got is myself in the stage. Even with acting, right? Sure, there's costumes and there's props and there's, microphones, all these things, but at the core, I just have myself and the stage and the audience, and that's it. Sometimes not even a real stage, sometimes, not even a full audience, or the audience can be interpreted different ways, right? And so that also makes me think, right, like these are opportunities. They are not even missed opportunities because they're right in front of me. So, but then there is the overwhelm, that reminds me somehow of swords, which is interesting here. Because I'm more than positive this is the symbolism for cups. Um, but it's almost giving me not even necessarily 10 of swords, but one of the sword suits where one of the negative ones, which is hard to remember, like which ones are the negative ones. And depending on how you read, you don't read any of them necessarily negatively or don't have to, because it can be symbolism of getting over it. But the cups tend to be emotionality, emotions, wishes, desires, and swords tends to be thoughts, and the thoughts holding us back. And getting in our way, which I know gets in my way, but for a cat, cats are different. And so interesting. So I'm gonna stick with my original, like these are opportunities. I just need to look at them as opportunities that I need to now I don't need to take all opportunities because then they will become burdens. Okay. And like a cat cannot, tackle on like 10 bowls at once. If it's like my cat, they only need a water bowl and then like maybe a couple of different dry foods and then like their wet food. And my cat is really, really smart and like I is like a nutritionist in a past life. I don't know how she doesn't overfeed herself. She knows exactly how much of each little one she wants to snack on and doesn't overstuff herself. I don't know how she does it, and leaves more for later. Some other cards I got like from I'm pretty sure this is a Starseed Oracle deck. I got Jump In, Andromedan, Energy, Adventure, Say Yes to Change. I'm just gonna just describe this visual. I'm not even gonna show it on camera, because I think it can be really trippy and really hard to make out if it's not in front of you. For sighted folks, it's like uh the whole image is a universe. You see floating planets, floating stars, floating galaxies within the cosmos. It's just so much. And then there's an eye, a mysterious eye. It looks like a human eye in the center. It's very large. And then there's this body, feet up, that's literally diving in. And then there's a splash of water in the iris, in the pupil of the eye, overlapping it. Andromedan energy. So that's like after Andromeda, the stars, star formations, jump in, Andromedan energy, adventure, say yes to change. Um, so this is of course pointing to like being in alignment with the stars, which is great. But it's also like, don't fight. I was talking about stagnation earlier, and this is saying say yes to change. So, if I'm feeling stagnant, if I'm feeling stuck, and I know, okay, there are different ways. I'm being told all these different ways I can change, all these different ways I can change up my routine. Um, all these different ways I can switch things up to feel better, then yeah, I'm gonna do it. And it might be painful, growing pains. But it's beautiful and adventure. I love adventure, like and spontaneity, even though sometimes I'm like, it's hot. There's also the adventure of like going within. The adventure of just like getting lost, not looking at the time for hours and just getting lost in creating art, creating music, dancing, singing, playing with a pet, whether it's playing with my cat, and yeah, writing. There are different ways where one can get spiritually lost, in a good way in the adventure. And what's beautiful about the adventure is like, yeah, you might get lost along the way, and then how you come out of it is also really beautiful. right? How we say yes to change, and then things change, and then we may be freaking out, like, holy crap, things changed. I said yes to the change, and now things are changing. Oh my gosh. And so that initial change might feel weird. And right now there's like retrogrades and rebirths and dog days of summer and transformation. And so there's a lot of that energy going around. I personally have Scorpio in three placements in my tropical chart. So, and I have the death card tattooed on me, which I really wish I thought about that before I got it, but it's just a matter of taking ownership of that, that I have that power to transform, and that my life is one of many transformations and many changes. But I know that the change is necessary. Change is necessary for my life. And I still have a lot more changes internally and externally for my environment to go through in order for me to reach my best self, my best life. And I know that. Another card that came up, and it's like this mirrored image of a person on their knees, just in this begging position with their hands almost like closed, almost like a prayer held to their head, back is bent over, and there's like all these stars across the sky, and um this kind of mirage of a tree, and then the tree goes into roots underground, and under that ground we have like two faces right underneath each person, which is just right mirrored image of the same person, right, or the same being. It appears to be, and those beings are made up of roots as well. To me, like, I'm gonna read what this card says, but to me, I'm getting this off of the visuals, but and the energy there, but it says, I'm sorry. I've also pulled this card before. So it says, I'm sorry, defenselessness, riding past wrongs, uprooting. To me, I completely get this. Especially with the mirrored images, which I'll just show up to the camera for the sighted folks. The mirrored image of, like, you can literally fold the card in half and you have the mirrored image of a person begging forgiveness, right? Begging for forgiveness. Um, and then you have just the face, and this, and like androgynous faces of made up of the tree roots and the stars underneath the ground as well. So there are stars in the sky, stars in the ground. And I think that is alluding to, of course, the ways we're interconnected, with trees, and trees that communicate as well. Trees are a wealth of knowledge. Trees connect us to Mother Nature, Mother Earth as well. And we are connected. We are connected to the point where forgiving someone else, it helps us forgive ourselves. Forgiving ourselves helps us forgive other people. And so I know that for me, it was easier for me to get behind. Like, for a moment, I was like, yeah, I can forgive myself. Oh, I love myself. And then I could forgive everybody. And then and then I like came down from like this manic high, and I was like, all right, I can forgive everybody, but I can't forgive myself. And it's like, well, why can't I? And like, so I still struggle, with like a lot of earthlings who have, and light workers, I'm still working through a lot of dense energy, a lot of the compression, from not just PTSD, my own PTSD, right? While it feels like, oh, I'm stuck here, what I have recognized is, as an empath, like this, I also have to work through the karmic clearing of my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, their, grandparents, diasporic things, because I'm connected to different diasporas. That's multiple diasporas worth of BS to work through. There are things that have like intergenerational trauma is something that as a light worker, I am faced with. Um, and this is something where it's like, it's not, of course, it's not all on me, but that doesn't mean I don't feel a lot of it. It doesn't mean I don't feel um almost everything, almost it all, that I don't feel it all. Because it can feel like, oh, I feel the whole weight of the world on me. And then it's important for me to remember, like, but whose baggage is this? And so to me, the way it is manifested in because of hexes put on me, but also just the way that capitalism is structured this day and age, and me happening to incarnate during this time and growing up during one time of technological boom, experiencing so many technological booms as a 90s baby, and then being here now and being like, I'm an old soul. I feel old school analog. Like I really wish I didn't have a cell phone. Um, or I wish my cell phone was text only. Like if I'm not home, don't call me because I'm not gonna pick it up and I'm not ready for a phone call. I'm not, I'm in public. I can't be taking phone calls. So something I want to do is get a landline eventually, but I know I would have to pay for that separate from the cell phone. So I know this is why people are like cell phones, but one day I want to have a landline again. Um, just because I know that's, yeah, what I need. Um, but not being sorry or apologetic for being genuine, I think I misplace my apologies in other people. Like, oh, I'm sorry for being genuine. I'm sorry for being vulnerable, as opposed to I'm sorry to me for not upholding my boundaries. I'm sorry to myself for not, speaking my best interest um forward, keeping my best interests at heart. Um, or I'm sorry for going against my own boundaries. Um, or I'm sorry to my inner child. There's a lot of ways that can look. I know for myself, and a lot of it, I bullied myself so much because of all this psychological riffraff. And these psychological games, and the thing with like spiritual warfare is if you know these people in real life, these, spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual folks that are also attacking you, um, then it's like, then it becomes like psychological mind games is how they manifest. And then that's when you get the wait, am I crazy? Am I losing my mind? Like, and am I tripping out because of being gaslit in the past? And then I ended up gaslighting myself. And I don't even like using the word crazy, but reclaiming it as someone who experiences psychosis, um, or, being psychic, which I don't think are different things. Um, Anyway, let me continue to go through the cards. Actually, I might pause the video here and then do cards in another video, because I pulled so many cards and I don't want this um reading to go so long. But here was a sample of how I read cards for myself. And so I'm going to post somewhere else where I'm reading different cards, but here was a sample. And here was where I also was able to talk a little bit into, in case there were collective messages that folks need to hear on divine feminine, divine masculine. I hope with the yin yang, I hope those conversations helped. Um, yeah, need to empty my bladder and clear my mind a bit. But thanks so much for watching, and I hope this helps somebody out there. Peace and light.